Hey everybody, welcome back. Mr. Eric here, and got another headphone review for you today. Today we're looking at the Beyerdynamic DT1990 Pros, and we're going to be comparing them to a couple other headphones such as the Sennheiser 660S and the Focal Alex. So if you're new to the channel, I do a lot of headphone reviews here and talk a lot about other headphone gears such as amp stacks, things like that. So if you're new, consider subscribing to the channel, and if this video helps you out, I would appreciate it if you would give me a like down below. So with that being said, let's get right into it. Let's look at what comes with the DT1990 Pros. So the box here is pretty nondescript. It's just a thin, cardboard box. Most of the Beyers come in something similar to this. What is really kind of stand out with this package is the carrying case that everything comes in. So this is really, really well packaged and well done, in my opinion. So let's just take a quick look at kind of the thing. It's a soft case that has kind of a rigid structure to it. It feels really, really nice. And when you open it up, things are just really nicely presented in here for that initial open. You get a couple of pieces of documentation, which I did find useful, just because this has some tips in it on how to change the pads. More on that later. So I did like that quite a bit. And you can just see everything fits really well into this package. I do think it's a very nice package. I think it serves its purpose well. I particularly like this touch of having the extra pads and the spot for those in here, and again more on those extra pads later. In here we've got a coiled cable as well as a straight cable. Okay, they both terminate in 3.5 with screw-on 1/4 inch adapters. Obviously, I have only used the coil cable. I think this one's about like 10 feet long or so. But I prefer the coil cable just because it's nice and short at my desk. You can see it's only about maybe 3 feet all coiled up, but you've got a lot of stretch to it. Easily, you can get 6 feet out of this thing, but it's very comfortable for me at my desk. So really nice case. Let's go ahead and get the headphones out of here, and I'm going to set that cord out for the time being, and we can give these a good look over, because they are worth spending some time looking over, because they are really, really high quality headphones. So the first thing that you're going to notice when you pull out the DT1990s is that, well, probably you notice the grills, because that's just really, really well done. Honestly, reminds me quite a bit of like Darth Vader, esque type of a look, which I think is pretty awesome. Death Star, I get kind of a Death Star vibe from it, which is, I'm a Star Wars fan, so I dig that, obviously. If you can see my lightsabers back there. So in my little Death Star light right there. So yeah, Star Wars fan, so I dig it. All this detailing is just super, super well done. Feels very hefty, very premium. It has that classic Beyer, style to it, but having owned several models of Beyers, I've actually owned at one point in time, I've owned the 770s, the 990s, the 880s, a couple of versions of the 880s actually. So I've gone through pretty much all of those lower models, but this one is definitely a step above all of those. It's got a really nice cushion on the headband. Again, this is much nicer than on those lower end models, so it just feels super robust, super well made. Absolutely no complaints about build quality here, and just all of the finishes just are really, really nice. I can say with confidence that I believe this will last you a good long while. I mean, it does just feel like it is built like a tank. you know, adjustments are very precise, very clicky, very nice. They'll stay put, but they do have to be on the smallest setting to fit in the case well. But yeah, just a beautiful headphone, and yeah, no complaints build-wise with these. No complaints at all. As far as comfort goes, again, if you've ever tried any of these Beyers, I think you pretty much know what you're going to get comfort-wise. They are pretty comfortable. You know, they've got a reasonable amount of clamp to them, nothing that's going to cause any concerns. And I think you also could, you know, if you gave it some coaxing here, I think you could get them stretched out to the point where anybody could pretty well find them comfortable. I have a fairly small head, and you know, I got to click them out a couple of settings. So I think for most people, you're going to be able to find a good range here as far as fit goes. So yeah, build, comfort, all that's excellent. Total package, I think, is a very good package. I like that you get 2 sets of pads. I like that you get 2 sets of cables. I think they're really trying to provide people with like a complete kit here that's going to meet most people's needs. Let's talk about sound with the DT1990, and it's kind of different because it comes with the 2 different pads that do change the signature. I think let me just kind of generally give you my impression of what this headphone is like to listen to, and then we'll talk specifically about those different pads and look more closely at those. This is definitely like an analytical headphone. I mean, it's purpose built to be a studio use headphone, and I think, you know, that's apparent in its sound signature. That being said, I find it quite enjoyable to listen to music with this. I think it errs on the side of more analytical than something like my 660S, and I think more analytical than like the Alex that I need to review here still as well. But that being said, I think the level of clarity here is pretty nice, and it's a fairly flat response. And again, that changes depending on what pads you use. And I think the detail, retrieval, and resolution capabilities are, you know, quite good on this headphone. I would almost challenge that they are, I definitely think they're better than the 660 as far as detail retrieval. And I almost would make the claim that maybe they're better than the Alex, actually, as far as detail retrieval goes. So a very capable headphone, technically speaking. Now, depending on which pads you use, it changes a little bit. So let's take a look at those different pads right now, and let's kind of describe the sound differences between them. So I just want to show you real quick the pad difference in for the pads that come with the DT1990 Pro, and you can see they're really kind of difficult to tell apart, I feel like, if you're looking at the front of them or the part that goes on your head. But when you look at the back, you know, it's pretty clear to differentiate them. The ones with fewer holes here in them are the analytical pads, and then the ones with the holes that go all the way around, those are the balanced pads. So I do really appreciate that these come with a couple sets of pads, and they do very noticeably change the tuning. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like a major change of the signature, but it's definitely a change for sure. The analytical pads, I thought, had better controlled bass, and I thought that they definitely had more energy in the upper mids and treble frequencies. Not that it made those frequencies harsh or anything like that, but just more presence in those regions. And you know, in contrast to that, the balanced pads had much more mid bass to them, and definitely the treble was pulled back just a little bit. And especially I found this most noticeable in like the upper vocal ranges, where again, the analytical pads had a little more energy to them. Really, I honestly found that surprisingly that I think I prefer the analytical pads on them, just because they added like a little bit extra clarity and a little bit extra sparkle that I found quite enjoyable. So while the DT1990 has, is definitely a treble present headphone, I think that it's detailed and well resolving enough that for me it didn't cause any problems. But if you're really treble sensitive, you may very well prefer these pads, or you may want to steer clear of the DT1990 period, just because it's known for, just like the other Beyer headphones, they're known to be a little bit on the bright side of things. Again, to me, it wasn't an issue, and I like the analytical pads, but your mileage may vary when it comes to that aspect of these headphones. Now, one unfortunate downside to the pads here is that they aren't super easy to get on and off. There is a technique to it where you've got this little, you can see that, you get this little notch here. So you've got this little notch system here to help you change these pads. And it is a little difficult, but once you kind of get the hang of it, you got to just kind of hook a little bit of the lip of the pad on this notch here. And then you just kind of rotate the pads around, and it does, you can see it can be done. It can be done. It takes a little bit of practice, but once you kind of get that system down, it does work okay. There we go. I don't think you're going to want to be swapping these pads often, I guess is what it comes down to. So my guess is that most people will probably pick one that they like and pretty much stick with those. And I think that's kind of a bummer, because if they were easier to swap, I could see, depending on your mood, jumping from one pad to the other. But I think for me, it's a big enough pain in the butt that I would just avoid that. And I would probably just stick with the analytical pads is probably what I would do. There's probably a lot of people that would prefer to just stick with the balance pads. But either way, it's nice to have the option at no additional cost. What I did find myself doing to demo these different pads is I did find that the clamp is good enough on the DT1990 that I could just kind of place the pads in there, and then I could just put it on my head, to where the clamp is good enough that it wasn't an issue that the pads slip out or anything like that. So if you want to just, when you initially get them, or if you just have an afternoon or something that's free and you just want to bounce back and forth and kind of test them out, you can pretty easily place them on, drop them down, and then swap the other ones real quick. Again, you're not actually putting them on the headphone, but with the clamp, it's no problem. And then you can at least test them out a little bit, and that's how I did it myself. So after talking about those sound differences between the pads, all this testing was done mainly on the Magnus. And obviously something to keep in mind with this headphone is that it is not balanced, and really can't be balanced. I mean, I say can't. It's not like it's impossible, but it would take some reasonable modifications to get to that point. So you're using this single-ended. And it is a 250 ohm headphone, so I do think you're going to want to have some power to drive this thing. I did try it off of the Zen DAC and the Hip DAC, and I found it pretty lacking when I listened through those devices. I just don't think they had enough power to drive it to the point where it's reaching its technical capabilities. I thought using those devices, it did come off a little bit harsh. The bass seemed a little bit bloated to me. But when I switched over to the Magnus, boom, I really started enjoying the DT1990. So make sure you got enough power to drive it.
I would think that most desktop setups would be perfectly adequate, and I felt like it matched very well with the Magnus's more clean linear sound. I do have my CTH over there that I tried it on as well, and it sounded good on that, but I preferred it overall on the Magnus. So I think if you're looking for like a budget amp option for this headphone, I think something like the Heresy from Schiit would be a good one to look at, or you know, the AAA one, or again, I think the Magnus, even though you won't be able to use balanced, I just like that amplifier for kind of a general use, do it all well amplifier in that regard. So this headphone, where does it land for me? I think personally, my taste, I prefer the 660S. I just really like that headphone. I think it just sounds so natural. And the timbre of that headphone is just, I just think it nails timbre, and it nails imaging, and it nails space presentation. I would say the 1990 is like a little bit wider, a little bit better separated, but I don't think it didn't come together for me in as nice of a just sit back and enjoy music type of a sound as the 660S. And that being said, I do feel like if I was, you know, a studio use person, I would definitely go for the DT1990. I think it more clearly presents the different pieces of the music while still doing it in an enjoyable way. But I just, the 660s, they're just effortless to listen to, in my opinion, where this is a more focused listening experience. I actually think that I probably would take this over the Alex. Again, I haven't done the Alex yet, but I just felt like things were more balanced and linear on the 1990 than they are on the Alex. I would say detail retrieval capabilities are similar, but in general, I feel like I just like the presentation better than the 1990. So in that regard, I think it's a pretty good value if you can pick up a set used. Now, these retail for about $500, and at that price, I don't know, I'd probably be hesitant to recommend them at that price. I think they're built well enough that you don't have to worry too much about, you know, issues with them down the road. I purchased mine for $350, and I think at that price it is super competitive. And at $350, I would definitely take this over like a $550 Alex, or certainly at half the price of the Alex if it's retail at $700. So I think this is more competitive with the 660S, but again, I think the 660 is a little bit easier to listen to, a little more laid back, and I just really like the natural presentation of that headphone. Again, though, if you're looking to do studio work, I think that the DT1990 is a great choice. However, for me, I've been really enjoying using the 660 with mobile devices, so I can take it around the house and things like that, and because of that, I think that's the headphone I'm going to stick with as opposed to the 1990, just again because it doesn't play as well with those mobile amp DAC combos. That's not to say that if you didn't have the right one, you know, you couldn't use this in that regard. So, you know, if you had something like the i5 Micro where you get a lot more power, that might work for you as far as, you know, a mobile or semi-mobile way to use this headphone. But yeah, if you were just sitting at your desk strictly and doing studio work, it's a great headphone, and I don't think you'll be disappointed with it. Yeah, so I think that pretty well wraps up my review of the DT1990. Again, I really like these headphones. I think I'm going to pass them down the road just because I don't need that studio monitoring, you know, super analytical headphone. I'm just leaning more towards just kick back and enjoy the music stuff. So, but again, not to say you can't enjoy music with the 1990s. I think they're a great headphone. I think they're a great do-it-all headphone. I think they are certainly competitive with the 660 and the Sundara at, you know, around, if you can pick them up for around $350. And, you know, my preferences as far as those headphones go, I'm 660 just because I think it's more versatile. I think then it would be the 1990, and then I think the Sundara after that, although they're all great headphones, but that would just be my preference with them. So I hope you found this helpful. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking it, and consider subscribing to the channel if you're interested in more headphone related reviews. I will have more headphones, amps, DACs, stuff like that coming up in the near future. As always, you are welcome to leave comments and questions down below, and I will do my best to answer those. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next video.